No, dude, consoles aren't getting less exciting. We're just getting old. Let's get into it. Skip it up and that up. So I saw an article yesterday. It was actually posted by Forbes on December 1st called Why the Xbox Series X is 2020's Biggest Gaming Disappointment. And he mentions the PlayStation 5 in passing too. That's why I put the PlayStation 5 and Series X in the title, because the points he's trying to make as to why the Series X isn't as exciting as previous console generations, you could also apply to the PlayStation 5. So it's a long article. It's an opinion piece. It's actually pretty interesting, though. I don't necessarily agree with it, but there's one point he makes, which I hinted at in the beginning of this video, that I agree with him on, and I think that's why he's disenchanted with these next-gen consoles mostly. Now, the first point that he brings up is he talks about how different each console generation used to be, and he's right. Like, when you went from the original Nintendo Entertainment System to the SNES, or even the Nintendo Entertainment System to the Sega Genesis, world of difference. Granted, they didn't have user interfaces, unless you got maybe like the Sega CD, I guess that would be considered a user interface, but you get my point. And then going from the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64 or the Sega Genesis to the PlayStation or vice versa, when you went to that generation, the fifth generation, it was like, damn, 3D, Super Mario 64, Tomb Raider, whoa, you know what I mean? And then even and then it started, you didn't get as big of jumps like when you went from the PS1 to PS2. The 3D was now cleaner. Less pixelated, no texture warping and things like that. Then you went to the PS2 to the PS3 or the original Xbox to the 360. You went from standard def. Well, actually, original Xbox could do up to 1080i, but you get my point. High definition HDMI was the big selling point with 7th gen. And fun fact, the original 360 just had a AV out that can only do up to component, or VGA. Didn't actually come with an HDMI out. And then when we went from the 360, and I remember even back then on XPlay, I don't remember which episode, there's no way I could even find it, where they were calling the Xbox 360 the Xbox 1.5 because it didn't feel like a big jump. Then when you went from the 360 and the PlayStation 3 to the PS4 and Xbox One, in the beginning people were saying the same thing. And now at this generation, people say they're feeling it even more, like every single generational leap is smaller and smaller. And look, here is the thing with consoles now. You're not going to get a completely different experience out of the box. Consoles are more like PCs, especially starting with the 8th generation of consoles with the x86 64-bit architecture. The PS4 and Xbox One have. PS5 and Series X also have the x86 64-bit architecture. So consoles are going to be like more so upgrading PCs. Like, as a PC guy, I'm used to the user interface being the same. Like when you had a Windows 7 PC, if you went from a 560 Ti graphics card to a 780, GTX 780, okay, your Windows 7 or 8 still look the same, but you upgraded your graphics card so when you played games, the games would look better. And we've kind of saw that with the 8th generation. We went from the PS4 to the PS4 Pro, from the Xbox One to the Xbox One X. It was an upgrade, and it was, especially with the Xbox One X, it was a pretty substantial upgrade. PS4 Pro as well, but more games hit 4K on the One X and the PS4 Pro. And now I understand what he's saying with the Series X. The user interface looks like the Xbox One X interface, and you're not really seeing a truly next-gen, totally different experience, but that's kind of how PC gaming is, and it's not that big a deal. But one of the things that feels very next gen, is a perfect example, is on the Xbox Series X and S. You could play Gears of War 5 multiplayer at 120 FPS, and man, does that make a difference. Playing Ghost of Tsushima on the PlayStation 5 at 60 FPS, world of difference. Being able to play 2018's God of War at its rock solid 60 FPS, which you could not do on the PlayStation 4. It had the performance mode, but it didn't stick to 60 FPS. World of difference. So it's not just about flashy new interface and games that look worlds different. It's about also improving performance and improving the quality of life of the console experience. And I think the PlayStation 5 and Series X do that. They have bugs, but once they're ironed out, it's going to be way more convenient to play in those consoles. And then he went on to talk about how console generations are dead because we got the mid-generation upgrades like the PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, so we're not seeing those jumps. But I still disagree with that. The performance difference that we're going to see, especially with upcoming games, from the PS4 Pro to the PS5 to the Xbox One X to the Xbox Series X, is going to be worlds different. And even the Series S, look, I have concerns about that console, and the concerns and criticisms I brought up, I still stand by. But due to its 8-core 16-thread Zen 2 chip, it's going to be able to bring you those experiences, and I'm excited what they can do with that budget hardware. It concerns me that games, to stick to their performance mode, have to sometimes go to 720p on the Series S, but I guess if they learn to optimize with the hardware more and learn to utilize the hardware more, developers that is, maybe the Xbox Series X will stay relevant for longer than I think. But to Matt Gardner, who's the editor and writer of this article over on Forbes, like, you have Digital Foundry saying the ray tracing performance of the PlayStation 5 is equivalent to an RTX 2080. Like, that's impressive, man. You have games that feel like a completely different experience on these next gen. Even though they were previous generation games, you play them, it's like playing a totally different game. So I don't think the mid-generation upgrades from the 8th generation killed generation cycles. The next gen consoles still feel like next gen experiences, especially when playing a game like Dirt 5 or Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War 120 FPS. I'm not a huge fan of Black Ops Cold War, but having that high frame rate on a big, beautiful 4K TV, I don't know about you, but that's next gen to me. And then he talks about how games don't look groundbreaking and it doesn't look like a big step up from the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox Series X. And what I'll say to him is, dude, it's early in the generation. You know, I used to be a critic of this too, and I should learn from my own mistakes. Like when we went from the 360 to PS3 to the PS4 and Xbox One, it wasn't a big jump. Those consoles were still the 8th gen consoles when they first came out, were still underpowered, but you jump the gun. But people were doing that from the Xbox, like I said earlier in the video, to the Xbox 360, from the PS2 to PS3. You can't jump and be like, oh man, all the games are ugly. Up, next gen isn't worth it. I used to do that quite a bit too. Give it time. If you're still disappointed with the graphics of games like a year and a half from now, and you still stand by that, then yeah, your opinion has more relevance. But right now, it's too early to judge what true next-gen games are going to look like, man. And last but not least, Matt, I can relate to this. Dude, we're old. I know you're in your 30s. You're in your mid-30s. I'm 39. You're not going to have that excitement anymore like when you were 9 years old. And I remember like being in second grade, and my mom used to bring me to this game store that was in New Rochelle called Merry-Go-Round, and had toys and stuff too, but behind the counter was where all the NES games were. And even if the game sucked, like a game like Deadly Towers, you should watch the nerd review on that, the Angry Video Game Nerd, you still were excited. It was like you won the lottery. You couldn't wait because the entire weekend you had to play the game, and all was right with the world because you were holding a box of a video game, and there was that adrenaline there. Dude, we're in our 30s. I don't know about you. I have kids. I have other things going on. I got real life problems. It's exciting to get the RTX 3080. It's exciting to get the PlayStation 5 and the Series consoles from Microsoft, but it's not going to be that same enthusiasm like when we were kids and when the Super Nintendo first came out and you couldn't wait to sit down and put the controller in your hand and play Super Mario World. It's just, you're an adult now. Things that used to really excite you don't anymore because your world has gotten much bigger and much more complex. And I think we have to understand that consciously. I think subconsciously we understand that as adults, but subconsciously we don't. And that's why we nitpick more than we used to, because things that used to really excite us don't excite you as much when you're older and you have a lot more responsibility and a lot more stress. So I'll end the video with this. I think that the PlayStation 5 and Series X are very big jumps from PS4 Pro and Xbox One X and the PS4 and Xbox One. Just give it some time. Just give it some time. Everybody calm their man boobs. Even if they're hairy, you may have to calm them more. And these consoles will impress, both from Sony and Microsoft. I guarantee it. This is Rich of Review Tech USA signing out. Have a good one. Hey, if you enjoy my content, consider becoming a Review Tech USA member. I'll have a link below in the description. I live stream now on this channel all the time, and it gives you access to cool emoticons to use as well while I live stream. Again, link below in the description. Thank you for your continued support.